Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Baji Samina Sabah.
Ji, walaikum salam.
I welcome you in Copenhagen, and
Thank you very much.
It was my pride that last time I interviewed you, and it was a very successful interview and very famous interview, and really you have given us so much knowledge and so much information that we are very grateful to you. So today,
Thank you.
Again, you are on the line, and you are a brave lady, social worker and active political worker. And really, we are proud of you. And again, I would like to say a few words. There was one very good writer. I love him, John Henn. He writes a verse in the poem Little Breeches. He says, I think that saving a little child and bringing him to his own is a dinner sight better business than loafing around the throne. So today, our topic is same painful, heartbreaking, immoral, cruel, and unforgivable crime against humanity, and that is pedophilia. It's widespreading and wild-spreading. So let us start with the missing children. Where are these missing children now, and how they were missed?
First of all, I would just make some sort of introduction because I became interested in talking about this topic due to the crime which is prevailing, and I find it important to attain a moral consensus about a social malady which will impair people's lives and Muslims living in Europe. We are talking about what you already said, this crime related to pedophilia, and which are happening throughout Europe. You talked about the missing children. We have statistics in Germany that 3,500 underage refugee children are missing.
My God.
So this is just the numbers of refugee children. No one asks, because most of them, as far as I know, are refugee children coming from Syria and are belonging to the Shia community. They are mostly Muslim children, and whenever one child gets missing in Germany, which is a child living here, then you have a lot of news, but no one talked about these 3,500 children, where they might be, because if there's such a high number of children missing, you can assume crime. Of course, there must be something related to crime, and either they are vanished and you cannot find any traces, then of course there is crime. But if you know where they are, you have found some traces, then you have to ask, what are they doing? Who is sustaining them? Who are they living with? Are they used by some Arab gangs or criminal mafia for some criminal acts? Because this is then the next generation of criminals which we have in Germany living. So that's what I wanted to say about the missing children.
How is this rap with the underage children prevailing in the world?
You mean this vanishing of this?
How could it be that innocent children they get sex with the underage innocent children, and it is prevailing in the world? Also, you told Germany. It's also in the other part of the world. How it can be a innocent child who cannot defend himself or herself, and he or she gets victim of those criminals. So how it happens?
I mean, first of all, I would like to refute any allegations, because here in Europe they had this notion or this thinking this had something to do with Islam or the Prophet ﷺ. Because they said he was married to an underage girl, and that's why it became some sort of this wrong thinking. And at this point, I would like to refute any allegations which could possibly justify pedophilia, especially in the Muslim community, or the criminal acts in the name of the Prophet Muhammad. We know from exact sources that he did not have marital relationships with an underage girl. And all given tradition, which can be accounted as valid, point to this conclusion. And even if we say This means now we have to re-evaluate old scriptures and analyze them, which has always been a process in the Islamic history, where legal surroundings and all the other scientific perspectives has been taken into account. The history of Islamic interpretation always based on fact, because this has something to do with consent and the communication of consent of an underage child. And everyone who is possibly involved in the reduction of the age of consent, and believe me, there are some politicians or some groups who are very much interested in doing this. They have any other reasons but the safety of the child in mind. And I just wanted to make and emphasize that it is important to note that this sort of crime is not class related. It has become systemic throughout Europe and worldwide, but it is not bound to any religious circle. It is, you will find it in every community, and it is widespread. And they made a survey where in the UK an estimated 750,000 men have an interest in having sex with children, and 250,000 of them are sexually attracted to children under the age of 12. This is not something just randomly said. It's a survey which they made, and it comes out from one country. And you can assume that if in UK they have these high numbers, of course other countries might come to similar conclusions. And this survey also claims that up to 1 million children in the UK could have been victim of an assault, but mostly these crimes are not reported or investigated. So you can imagine how widespread this problem is, and the logical step after this is to create awareness and point out the extent to which these crimes have infiltrated the European societies.
I would like to add one thing. You had told about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He got married to underage girl, Aisha, Sayyida Aisha was mother. I do not agree with this. I have got research on this topic, and she was 17 years when she got married, and she was 19 years old when she came to Muhammad.
Yes.
We could discuss it later on, but it is like that. This is figures, because when we say 10 age, we don't say is 17 or 13 or like that. We say from 13 to, for example, 20. We say he or she is 10 age. So it's like that. That she was 17 when she got this nikah, marriage ceremony, and when she came to Muhammad, peace be upon him, she was 19 years old. And it is written in Mishkah Sharif, in a hadith book, you know it. So she was not underage. The people, they have made it like that, but it's not like that. It's not reality.
Yes.
And other thing is that I would like to ask you. You gave some statistics. So how does the statistics disclose the crime in figures? How come? Because you told me there are hidden pedophilia, and you gave me one figure, and this is very thrilling figure some you have given me. So these figures, how they come from the investigation, official investigation, private investigation? How does it come out?
This sort of surveys are not easy to make. Those people who go, they have to ask very private questions and everything. So they always have one part of a whole picture. So this means we are not talking about the dark digits. Hidden pedophilia, when you have official numbers which are up to 1 million, then you can imagine how high the dark digits or the numbers are which are not officially investigated. It's only a logical implication when there are such high number of people having this sickness. There must be some ways to get to these children. Sure. And sadly, we must say that the vast proportion of abuse happens within families. And nevertheless, I would like to show through an example of a girl to which extent this has already infiltrated official governmental structures and is still an ongoing process.
Will you please tell us about Madeleine McCann? It is very thrilling. Believe me, it is very hurting. Will you please disclose it?
Mhm. I would like to show it through Madeleine McCann's case. From there, you can see how much it has already infiltrated official governmental structures, and it will be an ongoing process until the perpetrators are brought to justice, because no one can be sure if this sort of thing is happening in the UK, if this has not worldwide implications. And what I would like to emphasize, that what I'm saying is based on the fact that we had persons in the past, like Jimmy Savile and the former British spy Jeffrey Prime, who have been involved in crimes of sexual abuse of minors and were highly connected to those sitting at the power headquarters of British society. So if this can happen in UK, it can happen everywhere, because they have same patterns everywhere. So as we have these high numbers of pedophiles on one side and a high number of missing child cases on the other side throughout Europe, we have to ask ourselves where these children are and if these disappearances are linked to pedophilic and ritual abuse crime. We talked about the 3,500 Syrian children, where nobody asks where they are, although they are coming from a community which is also very much connected within Europe, from the Shia community. I heard from Ahmadi families that their children are taken. I heard from one man who came once up to me. He said that they're taking away our children. And I'm just asking why Ahmadis are not asking the question, why isn't anybody asking if this has some sort of system. And we know from the cases in the past, it was proved, we know it in Germany, that children were taken from their parents and were given to pedophilic families, which were into the foster care system.
Oh my God.
So, like you said, it is very important to show through the Madeleine McCann case that there is some sort of systemic crime, because what is happening in the Algarve, which is known to be a pedophile paradise, is happening in the same pattern anywhere else, or could happen in the same pattern anywhere else, because these gangs work together and are connected worldwide, and they are often connected into high level of authorities. Like you said, tell me more about Madeleine McCann. Madeleine McCann is a girl.
Yeah.
I'm saying she is, not was, because in my eyes, children are born into the truest nature of Islam.
Yeah.
And when they are killed, they die as shaheed. And we know that a shaheed never dies.
Yeah.
So Maddie, as she was called, inshallah. So Maddie, as she was called, is a girl who disappeared from her holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal, on the evening of 3rd May 2007.
Yeah.
And there has been big coverage, media coverage, and a big campaigning. And all the official and non-official investigators who have viewed the evidence and analyzed it came to similar conclusions.
Yeah.
People like, for instance, Gonzalo Amaral, who was the official police investigator until he was withdrawn from the case, and later wrote a book named The Truth of the Lie.
Yeah.
Richard Hall, who has analyzed and published very extensive material on YouTube.
Yeah.
Then the criminal profiler Pat Brown, she also wrote a book, and the statement analyst Peter Hyatt, who analyzed the speeches of the parents and came to very similar conclusions.
Yeah.
They all came to the conclusions, or more or less had similar conclusions, that the child died within the apartment.
My God.
There were traces of DNA found. Blood dispersion pattern were found on the wall. Cadaver dog smelled a cadaver odor in the closet. And on the clothes of the mother and in the car hired by the McCann parents, there was scent of blood and cadaver odor.
Oh heavens.
It indicates either an accidental death or murder. An accidental death is not much likely due to the fact that of the blood dispersion pattern, because they found blood on the wall, and whenever blood is very much spread around, then there is some sort of force on it, on the body or on the source. So I recommend the research of German criminologist Mark Benecke if someone wants to go intensively into this case. It also indicates the involvement of the parents due to the fact that the smell of death was detected by the dog on the clothes of the mother and in the car hired by the McCanns many days after the disappearance of Maddie. There are some hints because there was so much media hype, yeah, and that's why there are some hints that this girl was sold by her parents, because we know that the father traveled to Miami months prior to their holiday, and the girl was sedated the night of her disappearance, either to make her sleep due to her injuries or to be able to go through the procedure of rape. There are indications that this buyer was a close affiliate to Hillary and Bill Clinton, because you cannot explain until now the high amount of money which was given to just this middle-class family to cover up this whole thing. And these close affiliates to Hillary and Bill Clinton, John Podesta and his brother, are masters in networking and media campaign. WikiLeaks leaked emails of John Podesta where they are talking in pedophile code language. Some voice proofs were published. They can be seen online where John Podesta was heard being involved in a sadistic pedophilic act. And the fact that the Podestas were in Portugal on that date when Madeleine disappeared. And just to emphasize, or just to explain, the Podestas were very influential. They were the right hand of the people within the Democratic Party. So they made all the policies. So they were very, very high influential people. So due to this, a very expensive and extensive cover-up was financed, either directly or indirectly, financed from the British government, which shows the level of involvement, which was not to serve a middle-class doctor family, but some higher interest. Yeah. So you can imagine if children disappear so many times in Europe or worldwide, but no child gets 12 million pounds in donations just to so that she could be found. So you must think how vast or how big was the interest to cover up the real story about Madeleine.
Unbelievable.
This whole story also shows that if you have power, and these people have power, and have committed pedophilic crimes, you do get children and never get an indictment. They cut deals with perpetrators who are influential and rich, but those who are poor go to jail for the same crime. So there is not only this structurized crime, it is the structurized cover-up of the crime, which is the crime itself.
Terrible. But my question is that how it comes that the parents are selling their children? Why they sell their children?
I mean, about these parents, many have made speculations, but they say that either they are sociopaths or predators themselves, because there are some psychological or some sort of diseases where parents are or have some sort of disease and have this sociopathic traits, that they are cunning enough to do these things. Some parents do it. I don't think that these parents explicitly have only had this reason, but they say that these parents were broke. They had financial problems, although they both were doctors, due to overspending. And you know how people nowadays want to live. They want to have everything. So greed is a big factor in selling the children, especially when it comes from poor countries and countries where there is no social system. That's the sad factors. So they've made also a survey that in Germany, for instance, after I think after half the month, the people go out of money. So their wages are not enough to survive through a whole month. So I'm not saying this is any justification, but when you have a rise in poverty, of course you have also a rise in crime. And these children are vulnerable, and when there is an established market of child sale, of course they will sell their children.
Really, I'm shocked, when you tell about John Podesta or Hillary or Bill Clinton and their relations or affiliation and so like that. If these people, they're influential people, they are involved in pedophile. So what about the normal persons? And children, they are innocent, regardless, as you have said, regardless their religion or race. Our children, they are innocent. They are born on the nature. You said they are born as Muslim. It is like that they are born on the nature. But for the sake of awareness, let us come to the Muslim community. Are their children safe? Are they also involved in this dirty act? I mean, this dirty trade?
I mean, children are vulnerable and innocent, and it doesn't matter which religion they have. Like you said, we believe all children are born as Muslims, so we don't make any difference. I think for the Muslim community, it means they have to be very open about this topic. There shouldn't be any taboos.
Yeah.
And we need a long-term strategy against this bad state of affairs, because not talking about pedophilia and acting out of this abuse does not only harm the children, it is a harm for those who want to get treatment and don't want to harm these children. Because let us be clear, if you abuse a child, you ruin this child's life. And there is no excuse for perpetrators nowadays not to get treatment after all the advancement in treatment.
Yeah.
And I think Muslims have to be aware that if this happens systematically, as we can see in Madeleine's case, this market process will infest or has already infested the Muslim communities and every country where they choose to live. Or do they think that 3,500 children in Germany just vanished into thin air? Where are these Muslim children?
Sad.
And why doesn't anyone ask? Because where there is a demand, it always establishes a market. The difference is this sort of market goes against all core values of humanity and Islam.
Sure.
But we have sadly also people coming from, you will not believe it, coming from within the Muslim community who are involved in these things.
Allah.
And we also have to ask, like I said before, we have many cases where children are taken from families where you cannot find any obvious reason. They're given into foster care. There we have to ask, is this systemic? So the conclusion to this is not only to create awareness, but also to conduct a long-term strategy to fight the crime of pedophilic and ritual abuse crimes against children.
Sure.
And we need checks and balances. There are many factors which could be conducted. For example, compulsory physical examination for minors.
Sure.
Specialized in child sexual abuse. And the checks and balances within the welfare facilities, they have to be more extensive. You have to check, are these children safe with this family? And we have to realize that the crimes which are hidden in plain sight, their parents put their children's photos and videos with the contact address, because this might be a new strategy for the pedophilic crime network to buy and sell children on platforms, for example, like YouTube or any other platform. That's what these things I realized myself. It is so easy to sell a child because you just have to put up an innocent photo, and then these people know where they have to contact you, and they just do it.
So sad.
When they're from the same area. So because we have this sort of criminal parents or criminal-minded people who are greedy, then we have also this sort of system working.
It's terrible. It's terrible. My last question is that you give us always good proposal and suggestions. So what are the precautions to get rid of this mental disease? How can we secure our children for the sake of their brilliant future?
I mean, the main priorities within families should be treatment. of course,
Nice.
and the welfare of the child, even if this means to remove the perpetrating father.
Yeah.
And sadly, we have to say it's mostly male orientated from the family to avoid pedophilic grooming.
Yeah.
Because we know that people with this sickness go to extensive lengths to be close to children.
Yeah.
And there has to be also other measures which have to be taken. The dark web should not be a legal vacuum, because many people upload these criminal videos on the dark web to gain more customers, and there must be some rules and regulations for this sort of web, that it doesn't matter where this thing is uploaded. If there is a crime, there has to be a possibility to trace these criminals back. And countries like, for example, the poor countries, for example, India, Pakistan, Congo, or China, for example, where many children are missing. I've had statistics in India. I think 2016, more than 200,000 children were missing. I mean, we don't have that high figures in Pakistan, but definitely in the African countries. And then, because there are, due to poverty, many other, they are more vulnerable, and they get abducted. And especially these countries, they must have judicial assistance agreements specialized on trafficking and crimes related to pedophilia.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of the logistics. How are those who are trafficked transported? Because there is some way to get to the customer, or does the customer get to the child? So there are ways, and people who are specialized in this should have more emphasis on this logistics, and there should be no hiding places, because this urge to abuse a minor can be treated. So there is no excuse of not indicting people, no matter how powerful they are.
Yeah.
Because when there is a treatment, you can go for treatment, and then these people have to be in jail as long as they are healed. Because otherwise, if they come out without treatment, they will do these crimes again.
Yeah, sure.
And after this first preparation of the interview, many people informed me about the things going on in my hometown of Offenbach. I could not put it in the first preparation of the interview. And they told me, it were anonymous hints. They came to me, and I was shocked. It is happening in my own town of Offenbach. They told me that Arab and other nationalities, alongside with criminal Germans, are running a big child sex trafficking area within my city. They are using women who get pregnant and get babies, which are either never registered, or criminal families use their legal child to sell them to pedophiles for a few hours. Child prostitution. Old buildings are used, and abandoned buildings are used. Some are trafficked in the backside of shops. Some private clinics are involved, because you need a corrupt doctor who helps to bear the child and looks away when signs of abuse are visible in the gastrointestinal tracts. We have Muslim women with headscarves and veils participating in this trade, because it is ruled by some Arab gangs coordinated via Berlin. They have their vast infrastructure. Possibly many hundred shops are involved in Offenbach. They have their own packet and delivery system, their own drugstores of people sitting in the drugstores. They are using shopping centers, malls, shops, apartments above shops, abandoned houses, everything which they can buy with money. And at least 500 to 1,000 people are involved in this trade, maybe even much more. That's just an estimation. And I'm so shocked about this, to hear about this fact, because this must have been going on for many, many years. And this only shows that the German authorities are either blind, they made several mistakes in the policies in the past. They should have done more to shelter these children, either through neutral compulsory medical tests, more civil police. In Offenbach, you think sometimes that the police has given up due to so many helpers of these criminals. Maybe also within the police department, I don't know. I will just give you one example. I made some photos and gave it to the authorities. And as I was walking through the shopping area and came back home, the same photos were in my bag one day later. photos which I gave to the night watchman of the police department. Just imagine who could have possibly be involved apart from a leak in the police.
Very sad.
So I think Germany has to wake up. Really, we have a big problem here because these criminals are only surviving because Germany is not very firm in police investigation and indictment of these criminals. And Germany has also failed to take the right steps. For example, we have gangs of beggars here who are begging in the streets, but are basically the informants of these child traffickers. And that's why I ask, because begging is officially not allowed in Germany on the streets. Why hasn't the police banned begging and removed them, indicted them, and put them into jail? They would have at least something to eat there, and the crime gang would lose their infrastructure. Why didn't they do anything? So I think it's a big mistakes from the authorities as well. Why this crime could prevail and rise here, and in my eyes, a criminal has no right of freedom.
Sure.
And the child's interests are always more important than interests of the perpetrators.
Sure.
And also, in my view, I think that Germany has to send those criminals back who have violated German law, because reintegration into a country without loyalty is less likely.
Sure.
It is also a question of language. And because these Arab gangs, the reintegration of some in a country where he or she speaks the language is more likely to happen, you know?
Sure.
And buyers of child sex should go to jail as long as they are either healed, or if not, they should never have contact with children again.
Sure.
And Muslim organizations have to wake up and support Germany in their task. It is also about the future of their children. Those parents or persons who sell or buy children should feel the full might of the German law and order, and should not be given back to those parents, because this lawless situation empowers crime, and that is what we should not want as Muslims. We want a safe surroundment for our families, because freedom of one person does not mean the enslavement of the other.
No.
And there is no freedom without justice, and children are the future of a healed Germany, inshallah.
Sure.
And it's only a few words I just want to say, because as I was preparing about this interview, there was loud screaming in the patio, a small child screaming, like the one in the Podesta video. Oof. And people who have viewed the Podesta video know what I mean. And this child said not to hurt her, and that she or he, I don't know who it was, girl or boy, he's afraid, and it was so loud. Oof. And I just want to say, it's so widespread that if you open your eyes and ears, you can hear and see things. But the question is, who wants to see it? These gangs, they rent apartments or occupy empty spaces where either in the back of shops or the apartments are rented, above or behind are used. And there's also a very other severe thing going on, which people have experienced in other countries. And these people who told me about it said that there's also a lot of child murder going on for cannibalistic reasons. A neighbor told me that you must think how obvious these things already are in Germany. A neighbor told me that a few years ago, we had a man who was publicly advertising on his website that he can supply children and dispose them as well.
Terrible.
Think about it. Why should a child be disposed after sexual abuse? So we don't only have pedophiles, we have sadistic pedophiles and cannibalism. And this is all happening here in Offenbach, Germany, hidden in plain sight. And only if you ask, you intervene, then people tell you. And think about the level of involvement. Why didn't the German police see these things before? Why didn't anybody blow the whistle? Because here there might be high-level involvement as well, like UK or USA. So this is a large-scale fight, and it has to be fought on all levels. Germany has to wake up. And Muslims, this is my last words, Muslims have a duty to attain knowledge, and knowledge which saves the current and future generations of their children is important. It is their duty to play a vital part in saving these children.
Sure. I think a pedophile, that is a slap on the face of humanity. And we should open our eyes And we should take our children, they are the brilliant future. This is our earning, this is our saving. These are our children. So we should take care of them, and we should hold eyes on these children. And thank you very much, Ms. Samina Khan. We are highly obliged, and you gave us so many information, and as sure as that people, they are listening to you and they will act upon your advices. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you as well. Allah Hafiz. Khuda Hafiz.